chatting with Lynn and Karen on WSMN 1590, Nashua's source of news and talk and radio. We are growing one voice at a time because we really do believe that you can make a difference. And in studio today, we have with us Hal Shurtleff. How are you, Hal?
Good, Karen. How are you?
Good.
Thanks for having me on again.
Oh, thank you. Hey, I'm all aflutter because of the lack of knowledge of the Constitution, and it's frustrating to me because I look at what's supposed to be being taught according to the laws that have been passed in the state, and I find that if you go down here and you ask the thank you, Joey.
Yeah.
If you ask the average student who's walking the street, they won't be able to tell you what's in the Constitution. Now, they're supposed to be being taught the Constitution
right.
in the classroom, right? You can also ask the average Joe on the street.
Or Jane.
Or Jane.
Jill.
Or Jill. Any of them, and they won't be able to tell you anything about it.
Well, it's very interesting. I've had some, just in the last few weeks, some of these experiences. I was down in Virginia. One of my daughters is going to Liberty University in August, and we went down there for an all-day student orientation. And it was a long day, but there's a minor league baseball park in town, in Lynchburg, Carolina League. And my girls didn't want to go, but I said, I'm going to check it out. And on the way in, there was a young lady running for Congress in that district. And she's handing out her little promotional brochures. And I stopped. I thought I'd ask her a few questions. And I said, where do you find the job description for a member of Congress? She looked at me kind of like, what's this guy talking about? So I rephrased the question. Where do you find out the jobs and duties and job description and, your responsibilities and powers? And she looked at me and she says, online? I says, well, yes, but could you be able, she had no idea. And
she was running for Congress.
She's running for Congress. So I said, the Constitution. Oh. And then I said, now how old do you have to be able to qualify for a member of the House? She said 32. So in other words, she had no knowledge of the U.S. Constitution.
Wow.
Now, she was a Democrat, and after I looked at her brochure, a very liberal one, although she was advocating for the end of corporate personhood, the groups that are pushing for this Wolfpack group. So it looks like some lobbyists were influenced. They weren't teaching her anything in the Constitution, just support this agenda item. But Scott Brown, a couple of years ago, we had a table at the Cheshire Fair, which we do. We're not going to do it this year because that's when camp begins. And,
okay.
It's a little bit too much logistics. As we grow, we'll have more opportunities. But anyway, we had a little 10-question quiz on the Constitution. And Scott came by. He's running for the Senate. He was a senator from Massachusetts. He moved up here, and
carpetbagger.
He was afraid of that. He kind of looked like a vampire looks at a clove of garlic. He wanted nothing to do with it. Jim Rubens, to his credit, took the test and got an 80.
Yes.
That's unusual to get that high. And then there was somebody running for the U.S. Senate in Massachusetts, and I was speaking at an event I was at. I attended, and we had a little Q&A session. So I asked her position on the trade issue, the TPP and those kind of Trans-Pacific Partnership and NAFTA, and she had she didn't have a position. She didn't know. But she was good enough. She said, afterwards, she said, I want to talk to you. So, I get more time. So I gave her my business card. She did call me up, and I gave her a little lesson on because she said she's the most qualified person to beat Elizabeth Warren and be the best senator from Massachusetts. So I said,
she obviously doesn't have Indian blood.
She does not, at least she's not claiming any Indian blood.
Okay.
So anyway, she's. Now, I saw her at a parade yesterday, the Flag Day parade in Dedham, and I handed her a Constitution. She said, I've got a bunch of these. I said, good,
Are you reading them is the question,
Now, this past Monday, our friend Rich Gerard. Rich Gerard's a school committee member now. No, he did have a radio for 5 years or so.
Yeah.
And his children have attended Camp Constitution. Well, he's a school committee member, and he asked me, a little while ago, if we'd be willing to donate constitutions to the school department, for the students. hey, we're a charitable trust, and that's what we got to be charitable. So I said, absolutely. And so Monday I presented 1,200 copies of the U.S. Constitution for some of the students of the school, and I said we'd be happy to do this in the future, and we would, even more importantly, be willing to help instruct. Because if you have a Constitution and you get someone like an Obama teaching you the Constitution, well, you're going to have a different attitude. You're going to have this notion that it's some kind of living and breathing, that what it said yesterday, it won't say the same thing tomorrow, and the majority can change it and, you know, redefine it and so forth.
And the words don't mean anything.
The words don't mean, what they meant yesterday will change today.
Yes, because, because we're
everything's
using
in
different.
flux. Yeah.
Everything's in flux.
Could you imagine, I like this analogy, you know, you and I make a contract. I'm going to paint your house, you know, and I'm going to say, I'm going to scrape the old paint off, I'm going to paint it white, I'm going to replace the fascia boards and whatever in the contract, and this is what it's going to cost you, and we both agree. And I come to the place and I end up digging a pool, you know, and I end up putting some sod down on you, and you'd say, well, what's this about? You haven't painted my house yet. I said, this is a living and breathing contract. What's wrong with you? Get with it. We're progressive free thinkers here, you know. Yeah. I'd be out of business so quick. You know, you go to court, and I would be obligated to, you know, enforce the contract or go. Yes, that's what it says in the contract, you know.
Yeah. So. Well, it's amazing to me because that's exactly what's going on. In fact, I want you to plug your Constitution camp first before we go any further. So when is it? It's going to be...
Well, we have a week-long family camp. It's
right.
from August 5th to the 11th.
Okay.
In the beautiful Berkshires of Massachusetts.
Okay.
And we have a great lineup. I mean, every year we have a great lineup, but this might be our all-star Hall of Fame lineup. We have a British Lord, Christopher Monckton, coming in. And by the way, he will be available to come on air if you're interested in booking him. And if you're not familiar with Lord Monckton, go on YouTube, look him up. He's phenomenal. He said that if we lose our Constitution, the world, I'm paraphrasing, the world will be plunged into a dark age. So he has a great appreciation for what we do in the colonies. And we have Dr. Duke Pesta, who's one of the top experts exposing Common Core. He's going to be doing a little class too on C.S. Lewis, so we're really looking forward to that.
Awesome.
Mrs. Chris Ann Hall, another constitutional specialist attorney that travels all over the country when she and her family are out in Haiti on a missionary field. And then we have, let's see, John McManus of the John Birch Society will be there. And we have one more, Professor Willie Soon. Who's
that's right.
Yeah, one of the top atmospheric scientists. And he was there last year. His first class he gave last year has got about over 120,000 views on a YouTube channel so far.
He's very scientific and explains things, and he's got quite a sense of humor. But you do have to listen carefully because he does have that little Asian accent there. But he is very, very, very informative. So your family camp is August 11th?
August 5th, Sunday afternoon until Saturday morning.
Okay.
We also have a gentleman who's a pastor, Pastor William Levy, who was from the Sudan. And he was tortured as a teenager. He was captured by the Muslim government and tortured. And he's going to give his experiences, life under Sharia law, what it's like. It's
awesome.
And he actually lives in the neighborhood too. He lives near the camp. So.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
And you can go to our Facebook page, and I posted the schedule.
Okay.
And our rates are very reasonable. We're, like I said, we're a charitable trust.
Right.
We charge what the camp charges.
Okay.
So there's some of the stuff that we add to it, and we don't charge you. But we're also going on a field trip to the Battle of Bennington site. In fact, it was Pastor Levy's father-in-law, who's quite the historian. He's going to be doing the tour. And we also have a few optional field trips to the Norman Rockwell Museum and to Mount Greylock, hike up Mount Greylock too.
Oh, awesome. That's terrific. Now, so your website is Constitution Camp?
CampConstitution.net, where you can find out about the camp and all of our other things.
Constitution.net. CampConstitution.net. So go there and look up. Now, do you have another camp that's going on as well?
We started a weekend camp. Now, our goal was to obviously start other camps. It's a lot of work.
Yes, it is.
We've had some interest in Michigan and a few other places, but we're starting a weekend camp in Maine, in Damariscotta, Maine. And that will be from September 14th to the 16th, Friday night to Sunday morning. And it's a small venue, so we only hold about 45, 50 people unless you bring a tent or a trailer. And Reverend Stevie Kraft will be our guest instructor at this camp, and I'll be giving a class or two. And I think we've had Reverend Kraft here in the studio, if I'm
Yes,
not
yes.
mistaken. He's a phenomenal. He won't be able to make it to our week-long camp. He's got a part-time job he won't be able to get away, but he'll be able to get away in September.
Right.
So.
So this is now, you've switched it because you used to have your camps in New Hampshire, and
Right.
so now you're in the the Berkshires,
Yes.
and then up in Maine.
That's
So
right.
that's great, but you've expanded, so
We
you're
have.
not just doing one
Yes.
week, you're doing a week and a week.
And of course, we're doing activities all the time.
Right.
Yesterday, it was a nice 5-mile parade where we handed out, we had some of our campers, one of my girls and a few of their friends that have been to camp. We handed out about 700 or more constitutions during the parade route. And then tomorrow, there'll be a rally, Flag Day Second Amendment rally in Belchertown at the Swift River Rod and Gun Club, and I'll be one of the speakers. And check that one out on Facebook too, because they have a great lineup. Larry Pratt will be there, Americanists of America. And it starts, I think, from 10 to 6. It's a
Yeah,
great little
I
event.
understand that our Susan DeLamus is going
That's
to be
right.
there as well.
That's right.
And we are constantly trying to remind the president that our friend Jerry
Jerry
DeLamus
needs to be
is
released.
still in
Devens.
Fort Devens, and we would really like to see him released from prison. So, anybody that wants to send a note to the president and ask him to release Jerry, that would be terrific. We're going to take a quick break because I've got a caller. Hello, this is Karen. Yes, how are you, Diane? I'm good. I'm going to, we're going to take a real quick break and then I'll bring you in after that. Well, this is Karen with Chic Chatting with Lynn and Karen on WSMN 1590 Nashua Source for news, talk, and music. And in studio I have Hal Shurtleff of the Constitution
Camp Constitution.
Camp Constitution. Yes. I'm going to get that right
get
one of these days. I always get my my horse before my cart, or my cart before my horse. That's what the one. And mix things up, but at any rate, Hal runs.
We have a cure for that. It's called alphaphonics. No, I'm just kidding.
Alphaphonics. Oh yes, and our wonderful Dr. Blumenfeld, who wrote the book "Crimes of the Educators."
That's right.
And my goodness, if you want to know what's wrong with some of our school systems, and we've gone down that path a little bit, and we haven't given credit to Dr. Blumenfeld lately, but.
He was one of our instructors and a dear friend of mine, and I inherited his library and papers. And thanks to that and the incredible abilities of our webmaster, Eric Conover, and our camp newspaper editor, Mark Affleck, they created the St. Blumenfeld archives. So you go to our website, campconstitution.net, and you'll see the archives. And all we're looking for is an email. When you sign in, it's free. You can download in PDF most of his writings, his books, all of his newsletters. We have probably about a month's worth, and I mean 24 hours a day, a whole month's worth of his audio, his speeches, and his lectures he did over the years from, I think, the 70s onward at various venues around the country. And
Right.
he traveled all 50 states, Canada, even in foreign countries. You can actually teach children or anyone else, adults, how to read phonetically using our website. We have all 128 lessons of his alphaphonics and audio and video, and how to do cursive, which has become a lost art.
So and it's wonderful. Please go and visit that website,
Right.
because campconstitution.net, and look at his archives, because quite honestly, what I'm finding is that by law, the schools in New Hampshire are supposed to be teaching cursive writing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they do. And I'm most interested to find out this from the school boards around the state, how many of them are actually following the law and teaching cursive and the memorization of multiplication tables.
Mm-hmm.
Those are things that are in the New Hampshire
basic
state laws.
arithmetic.
Right, basic.
And we also have a block of instruction for that too.
Yeah,
So
oh, that's awesome.
yeah.
That's awesome because last week or the week before, I read the 1895 exam for 8th graders.
Oh, really?
Yes, and I've
It's
had.
a challenge, isn't it?
It is a challenge, and part of the problem I found was I didn't know what some of the words were. I knew when I found out what the word meant
Mhm.
and where they were going with the question, I knew the answer.
Mhm.
I just, I was at a loss on some of it, and so it was pretty interesting. But we went over that, and it spurred quite a discussion between my husband's cousin and myself. He happens to be a doctor at the education field, and he is in California, and he has been a superintendent, and he is a teacher at a local college. So, he's quite learned by most standards. And what we found out was that his grandfather actually had the working knowledge of Greek and Latin,
Really?
which is very, very interesting because that used to be a requirement
That's right.
before you could even go to college. And you stop and think about our founding fathers, the ones who signed the Declaration of Independence. I think 30 of them were actually graduates of college. And when you go to the signers of the Constitution, we're getting up into the higher numbers of those. And many of them also held theological degrees, or they were deacons or administrators in their own churches. So they had a very strong understanding of biblical knowledge as well.
Well, the Constitution can only be the product of a Christian worldview. Maybe not every signer was what you consider a traditional Christian, but they were definitely in the culture. And because it's not laced with Bible verses, it presupposed mankind's innate depravity, and that's why they had checks and balances in all levels. And I like to quote John Adams when he said, he wrote a letter to some militia officers in Massachusetts while he was president, and he said, this Constitution is very religious. And in those days, religious meant Christian. It was synonymous. Today it has an unfortunate negative connotation. He said, religious and moral people, it is wholly inadequate for the governance of any other. And we live in this common core culture now where everything's dumbed down and confused. So there are people out there that I use the term they want to make the Constitution common core compliant. So.
No, that's very true. And so Hal Shurtleff is you're the executive director
No,
now?
I'm
You're
just
director?
Yeah, I'm the co-founder director.
Of
I'm the only
Constitution.
full-time person. We are
Okay.
a New Hampshire-based charitable trust, but of course we have influences all over the place. And we just returned from a homeschool show in Pennsylvania, in Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
Oh, good.
I was
Yeah.
out in Michigan late last year, trying to drum up support, and spoke to some homeschool groups. And it was a Catholic church. The priest that hosted us, and he was very accommodating and very supportive of what we do. So, but can I give you a little idea of what a camp like a day at camp looks like?
Oh, please
yeah,
do.
yeah.
I mean, this is exciting because
it's a very unique camp.
right, and one of the things that we do want to encourage people to do is really pick up those constitutions, read them, and study them, and then I have a little anecdote to share with you. But yes, give us a day.
Now,
at
first
camp.
off, it's a family camp. That means whole families, extended families. We have, I think we have 4 generations, a family of 4 generations coming from Cuban refugees back in the early '60s. So it's also for unaccompanied minors. So if you have teenage age, from 12 to 17 or 18, you can send them along. We're very well supervised. We have a camp doctor, a camp nurse, and we have very high standards. Of course, when most of the parents will be there, you can imagine there won't be a whole lot of children trying to get away with things.
Well, hopefully not. I'm concerned about some of our parenting skills, but I'm sure that you expect
That's right.
parents to take care of their children or they're not welcome.
That's right. So the typical day is 6:30 is an optional swim or run. We call it a polar bear swim or run.
Is
or
it
both.
pretty cold?
No, it's August now, and,
Okay.
but I don't know why. It's not very. I mean, if it was January, it's a different. 7 o'clock is wake up. 10 minutes of 8 at the flagpole. We do a morning devotion. We teach the youngsters how to do proper flag etiquette, raising the flag, and we'll pledge allegiance, do a prayer. And we also recite the preamble of the Constitution. So by the end of the week, if you don't learn anything else, you'll learn the preamble. And we have breakfast, and we have 3 classes in the morning. The classes are no longer than 50 minutes. We also have a program for the younger ones. We call it Patriot Camp. So the 5 to 11-year-olders are, and if the mom wants to opt out and bring the kids to the pond or lake, that's fine too. That's except for the older ones. That's you have to go to class. It's not a question.
And by older, you're talking about 6th and 7th grade?
Teenagers,
Oh.
junior high, high school. We do have an advanced class too, so we have 3 different levels.
Uh-huh.
And then we afternoon activities. We have some organized recreation: volleyball, wiffle ball, swimming, canoeing, chess tournaments, even ballroom dancing. And then which is an optional thing, and that was initiated by the campers. And we have a rule that there's no holding of hands by boys and girls, but we do make this one exception when you have to do a little bit of that when you
Yeah.
ballroom dance.
There is a little contact
That's
there,
right.
yeah.
We also
Okay.
have some field trips planned. We have a trip to the Battle of Bennington Historic Site, as well as where the actual battle took place in nearby New York. And then an optional hike up I almost said Monadnock, Mount Greylock, which is the highest elevation. Unlike Mount Monadnock, though, you can actually drive all the way up and drive all the way down. You can't do that Mount Monadnock. So, and we also are planning a trip to the Norman Rockwell Museum, an optional field
Oh,
trip.
excellent.
The last full day of camp, we will take some of the campers out and we will distribute those subversive things called U.S. Constitutions to some of the business owners in the immediate area.
Oh, nice,
Yeah.
nice. So you're doing a little philanthropy
We're
as
trying
well,
to teach
right?
young people that, see, the goal isn't just to put a bunch of information between their ears or more stuff than they need, but we're trying to get them to say, now you can get up, put shoes on this information and go out there and be the young freedom activist. And your parents, by the way, are becoming more effective because they're learning things too.
Right.
And they're learning what to do with the information. It isn't just, oh, I know this stuff and I'm smarter than everybody. That's not what it's about. It's to create the next generation of freedom activists and make this current generation a little more effective.
Exactly.
Or a lot more
Wonderful.
effective.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so my little anecdote to tell you is that my granddaughter has represented the state of New Hampshire for the last 3 years at the American Legion oratorical contest, which is based on the Constitution and your knowledge of the Constitution. And what amazed me was some of the speeches that progressed, but one in particular that referred to, is our democracy failing?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Let's
you
hope
know,
so, right?
and I know that we don't have a democracy.
Mhm.
And I was amazed that it had, this particular speech had progressed to this point at which it did, because you would think that the people who are judging this would have some working knowledge of the Constitution, and they would understand that we are a not a democratic republic.
Yeah.
We are a representative republic,
Mhm.
which is completely different from democracy, because democracy rules on the majority rules.
Well, James Madison, who was known as the father of the Constitution, wrote in Federalist 10 that democracies have ever been spectacles of turbulence and contention, short in their lives and violent in their deaths. So why have so many Americans think that we live in a democracy? Because that's what they hear all the time. Now, we do have democratic elections, but there are parameters. You have to be a qualified voter, and once that person who's elected democratically goes to Congress or goes to the town hall or goes to the State House, they have certain job duties. They can't do whatever the majority wants. This is my job description, and I'm not supposed to go beyond that job description. Unfortunately, we have many
Well,
Congress members do, or elected officials do go beyond
Well,
that.
many people do not understand, including our elected representatives, that the purpose of the Constitution was to tell you what you could do,
Mhm.
not to open up the door for you to get and
Most
restrict
things do.
us, but to tell to tell you, the elected representatives, what you could do as far as we were concerned, and then the rest of it was left up to the states and the people.
When you listen to an ad, a campaign ad, I think they cater to the lowest common denominator of the voters. It's almost silly, some of the things they say. There's one guy running for the Senate. On the way up, I listened to the ad. He's running for Senate in Massachusetts. I'm thinking, and he's supposed to be a conservative, you know. I'm thinking, this is awful. And then I get some city councils in Boston on my Twitter account, and one of them, Aliana Presley, she's I guess a far left so-called progressive. I hate the term progressive when it comes to Marxism. And she's going to run for Congress, and she's going to her district is the most economic disparity there, right? And she's going to change it. Well, what's she going to do? Rob everybody who makes money and give it to, you know? I said, that's not her job description. And she's going to make sure that the LGBTQ people in schools will have this. That's not your job description as a member of Congress. There's nothing in there about that. In fact, I love to point this out. I have a book from 1941 published by the U.S. government. Now, who was in power that? It was Franklin Roosevelt and his New Dealers, right? So it must be right, because they're all progressive free thinkers, right? And it had a little, it was a book on the Constitution, 150th anniversary. They were a few years getting it published. Saul Bloom was its Democrat man that was sort of in charge of this commission. And they had a question and answer chapter. And the question came up, one of the questions in the book was, what role does the federal government have in education? And how do you think that this New Deal, free-thinking progressive answered this question?
Oh, we're supposed to direct it.
No,
exactly.
They said
no.
None.
Really?
None, yes.
In 1941.
Yes, and by the way, anyone listening,
none.
get a hold of me. I will send you that reference to say that I'm not. It's in the book. You can actually, I think the book is available as a free PDF somewhere, and I'll be happy to tell you and show you that. I picked it up at a library book sale for about $1, and I started talking about it and posting it. And you go to Amazon, it was selling for like $2, and it's a like a 5-pound book. And I thought, that's not. And within 6 months, though, now you're going to pay $100 for a copy. So I'd like to think I have trade demand for this very interesting
I'm
book.
sure you did, Hal.
And so what has changed since 1941? Has there been an amendment added to it? No. They have a Department of Education been around, I think, since the 1920s. But at that time, it was basically just an office to tabulate facts and information.
Yeah, and it was called, I think at that time, it was the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare.
It was part of the, okay. Well,
yeah, so it was a conglomerate type agency at one point. Then under Nixon, he was doing a political payback or something along that line, and developed the Department of Education.
And then Jimmy Carter actually
Carter
made it into a cabinet level position. And
yeah.
almost every Republican president since then has talked about abolishing it. So far they haven't. And
well, you know, I'm hoping in some respects that that's the direction that our current president, who seems to be fulfilling many of his promises, that he will rein in the Department of Education, because it really. So this discussion that I've had because of the 1895 8th grade education. Has spurred some really interesting discussions with this cousin, because he is a learned educator, and he's involved in education, and yet he's right there with me that the Department of Education is really not supposed to.
Well, if you had a chart, now correlation doesn't always mean causality, but if you look at the Department of Education when it became a cabinet level position in what, 76, 77,
right,
and look at the scores of the students and the abilities, it's a downward spiral. So the more money they put into it, the less product.
Absolutely, and that's what our taxpayers are asking at this point.
That's right.
Our populations in the schools are declining primarily because of our attitude towards life and the elimination of life. But the other thing is that our tax dollar, they're all crying for more money. I mean, and it's absolutely insanity when you've got 1,000 students, and yet they're saying, we still need more money. We're $1 million in the hole, or $1 billion, $1 million in the hole, and we still need more money. It's absolutely insanity. So this is Karen with Conservative Chic Chat with Lynn and Karen on WSMN 1590, and we're talking with Hal Shurtleff from campconstitution.net. If you want to participate, be sure you go and check it out. We will be back after the news.
I have to scoot out a little bit, so.
Okay.
Yeah, did you
Yeah.
have anyone coming on?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, good.
I have somebody coming on at 2:15, but what we'll do is we'll bring you in and let you talk for a few more minutes and
Okay.
get us a wrap up and all of
Okay,
that.
excellent, thank you.
And I'm gonna run down and put some money in my meter, because otherwise they're gonna come and get me.
Big brother, or little brother.